Welcome to the Coming Home Well podcast, the show that educates, supports, and advocates for the veteran community. Your host, Dr. Tyler Pieron, U.S. Army retired, will bring you exciting conversations with amazing guests about resources, research, and military history, all geared to helping our warriors to come home well. Here's your host, Dr. Tyler Pieron.
Welcome back to Coming Home Well. I'm your host, Dr. Tyler Pieron, and today we have a very special show about a movie. And I had a sneak peek at this movie, and it is probably one of the best veteran-focused movies I've ever seen. I love movies, I love history, I love books. This one is really quite amazing. I sat down and watched it with my wife, and we were blown away just how real it was. There were so many things that we talked about here on Coming Home Well that were almost word for word in some part of the movie. The movie is called Sheepdog, and we have the star of it, Steven Grayhm, who's also the writer and director. Steven is full of this movie. He is the star. He's done a bunch with it. And we have someone who is equally important, Dr. Consolino, who was the inspiration for one of the characters in the movie, Dr. Alicia Knox, a VA therapist. As you might know, I'm a big fan of the VA. They do lots of wonderful things. They're not perfect, but by and large, there are some amazing things that happen at the VA, especially on the research side. And we might talk a little bit about that as well. Both of you, thank you so much for joining us on Coming Home Well, but really thank you so much for such an amazing movie.
Thank you for having us. And Tara, thank you for joining us from Michigan.
I appreciate you both.
Yeah.
We have been trying to get this scheduled for a little while. The movie is coming out, I believe, in January. There's it's going on the film circuit. If you're familiar with that, folks, they go around to the small previews and the award shows and all these things where they show it. And correct me if I'm wrong, it is an amazing story, but there's a lot of background to it. So, Steven, you took a while to get this movie together. What's the inspiration?
Sure. So in 2011, my car broke down 3 hours north of Los Angeles, and the local tow truck driver who picked me up began to open up to me on our drive into LA. And he began talking a bit about some of the challenges he was facing in his marriage and being a father of three. And then he began to share, the different medications that he was on and which were tethered to his military service. And I probably said 3 words on that drive home and just listened. And when we got to Los Angeles and he dropped me off, the spark had been lit, and my curiosity became a responsibility to find out if there was more men and women like him. And that summer, I set out on a nationwide road trip to speak to anybody and everybody who would speak to me. And at first, it was a very slow burn, to say the least. I think I had a map in my home office, and I had like 1 or 2 pins in it, and I thought I would be full, and but understandably, nobody wanted to speak to me in my co-star in the film, Matt Dallas, who did that first road trip with me. 2 guys from Hollywood. That was the perception, and we were slowly able to build the trust of the military community, and then, of course, with Dr. Consolino, the mental health care professional community, and that was a big deal. So, just to lead into that first road trip, Detroit was on our list, on our map, and I went into the VA. We introduced ourselves. You could just imagine, the response we got, and we
I'm sure it was overwhelming enthusiasm.
Oh, and yeah, it wasn't that, and but there was somebody there, Lisa only, who I think she saw it in our eyes that we genuinely cared, that we were adamant that we we weren't looking to do something controversial to like an uncovering of behind the scenes of the VA. We didn't have an agenda. We just wanted to speak to people that could inform us. And, and at the time I didn't know 100% it was going to be a screenplay. I was really just journaling and collecting stories. But Lisa led me to Tara, who worked there. And that changed everything.
So Tara, what is it you did? We know the character is based on you. Now it must be loosely based because she is way older and you're very young. So
No, I couldn't afford Tara's life rights. So yes, it was loosely inspired by. Um, and there's a lot in there that I'd love to connect the dots on. But Tara, just you have to share because I didn't know this until we did the panel at Harvard earlier this year. I didn't know that you felt that spicy about us and me because you hid that very well. But please share with Tyler like your first sort of first impression.
So I have to be honest. One, as you can probably imagine, or at least as Stephen has learned, I'm a direct and acquired taste. It's who I am as a therapist, it's who I am as a person. And Detroit can be a hot spot. We have been blessed with many Hollywood actors or athletes coming through. They want to know what makes the city tick, what is going on in, the VA world over in the Midwest. And so I'd met a lot of people, a lot of people who were not Stephen. This is where I have to be honest.
Mhm.
And I, in a different interview, can share other details, but it was his passion. It was the commitment. He wasn't looking at sensationalizing. He was looking at, so the role that I was in at the VA at that time was I was a combat trauma specialist, PTSD therapist working on the clinical team within the Detroit VA. And so this is one of those things that when you have veterans actually coming into care, which is the first hurdle, much less actually speaking about what they went through, what has caused them pain, and kind of dissecting and walking with them on this journey. When you do that kind of work, minimum of 40 hours a week, it becomes a family. Your men, your women, your teammates. So we as a whole were super protective of our people. So to hear, okay, we got Hollywood coming through again, it was like, I don't have time for this. Like, come on. But I was friends with Lisa, and Lisa's like, no, listen, he's different. I really would like you to meet with these guys. This isn't X, Y, and Z who came through last year. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. And then he came through and he was like, no, no, I actually want you to be real. I'm like, I don't think you want me to be real. He's like, do it. So I did. And then my guys trusted him. It was unbelievable how I don't know what it is. I can't put this down on what it was about Stephen and how he was able to channel this trust so quickly. I mean, therapists have struggled with building rapport as quickly and easily as he did, just
Mhm.
getting right in there. And if you think I had trouble trusting Hollywood, my guys, their defenses were really up. So the fact that him and his crew came in and then they were welcomed back
Yeah.
repeatedly over and over, hands down, it's been an inspirational element in my own life to see these connections being made that will be lifelong
Mhm.
just from this experience, him writing this movie and then them feeling seen.
You know, one of the biggest challenges that any therapist has is obviously connecting with combat veterans. It's always that authenticity, but also the genuineness. And I think that really reflects in the movie because I watched it a couple times, once sort of just to watch it, and the other sort of to nitpick it, because every single military movie gets things wrong and sometimes egregiously so. I didn't see much at all. There was maybe one or two small things, and I'm like, oh, but that could be just my own experience. There wasn't egregious. There's a joke about a movie called The Hurt Locker, which is a great
Mm.
entertainment, but it gets so many things just so very, very wrong that it's a joke in the EOD community.
Right.
And
Just
so
going
I
on
think people
patrol with
get
four
burned a little
guys.
bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like Tyler, look,
It's great
like
entertainment.
yeah. RPG incoming. Um, Yeah, look, the greatest challenge on this endeavor was getting it right. And
Hmm.
as you can see in the film, there's no melodrama, and the greatest compliment we typically get is that it feels like a documentary. And I
Yeah.
think that that is a testament to the actors that we cast who all do a really great job and all have their own personal stories that connect them to this experience. But I think that you know, I went into this with no agenda. All I wanted to do was to hold the mirror up, right? For better or for worse, I just wanted to, and I listened. And I didn't judge, even in my own writing, I didn't judge the characters. I didn't, we can go back to when Tara and I first met. I remember I sat in on a couple sessions and then we would go to like a restaurant afterwards, go to a bar and have a beer, and we would kind of unpack you know, there's a line in the film where my character says, "So the courts think you're going to fix me," right? And I say it in this kind of smart-assy way. And Virginia Madsen's character says, I can't fix you. That's your job, right? And I remember Tara saying that. And I remember saying at the bar later, like, you can't just say that. And she goes, if I become the feather in Dumbo's trunk, and you went into this whole metaphor, and I was like, oh my God. Because it
Hmm.
felt so abrupt. It didn't feel, I felt like, because in my mind, I don't know what in my head of like a therapist was supposed to be. Like you lay on the couch and the therapist sits there and tell me more.
And
And
it's all
Tara had this,
soft and
yeah, and Tara had this edge. And she was like, you would say to me, like, how do you think you're going to break through to somebody who's actually had these experiences? And that's just my approach for, and that's just what it is. And so look, I want to share this because I want to make sure that this is heard. I remember standing in the cafeteria of the VA, and I was with a veteran who pointed across the room at Tara, and I'd only just started to know you and work with you. And he said, that lady right there saved my life. And I remember thinking he's like 6'4", Tara's like what, 5 foot? And I remember just
On a
like
good
this,
day.
like on a good day, and single mom at the time. I think you're just going through it, and I was like, oh my God, what a. And I remember being so overwhelmed with, and I was like, this is the story, though. These are ordinary people in these extraordinary circumstances, being the veterans, but also people like Tara that are coming to work, not getting rich doing it, and just trying to make a difference.
hmm.
And I thought that there's a better representation of the VA here. Look, I get it. Both my brother-in-laws are combat vets. I can tell you stories just in our own family, right? Of waiting 3 hours for an appointment with your kids outside in the parking lot. The focus here in our movie, though, was to try to shine a light on the unsung heroes and to try to shine a light on the folks that are coming to work every day and trying to make a difference all across the country. And I thought that that was really important to highlight. I think I was fair with the depiction of the VA in the movie, like of some of the
Yeah.
prickly parts. Um, but I thought that that's where the focus should be because it is about doing the work, and
Hmm.
we address that the hardest road traveled or the longest road traveled can be walking through the front door.
Yeah, it really wasn't a sugarcoating, but also wasn't, a slam either. It's the
Yeah.
reality of
Yeah.
many people's situation. I realized I didn't even ask you what is a good synopsis of what the movie is about. So people are probably hearing, okay, there's a movie called Sheepdog. It's got the VA, it's got a
Mhm.
therapist. It's sort of we've sort of took a while to get to the screen. You went all over the country. What is a good 30-second, hey, what is Sheepdog about?
So Sheepdog is about a decorated combat veteran that is treatment adverse, who's court ordered, and at the same time, his father-in-law is released from prison, who's a Vietnam veteran, and shows up on his doorstep. And it's through that relationship of tough love in the community that my character Calvin is forced to come to terms with putting himself back together again for himself and his family. It's an ensemble piece. It stars Emmy nominee Vondi Curtis Hall, Academy Award nominee Virginia Madsen, SAG nominee Dominic Famusa, Tony nominee from Broadway, Lily Cooper, who's phenomenal, Matt Dallas, and myself. And this is not a post-traumatic stress movie. This is a post-traumatic growth movie. So I would say for folks listening, it's Manchester by the Sea meets The Deer Hunter meets Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, with the Boston setting and some
Mhm.
of the accents, I was like,
Yeah,
For
those
a
are
moment, when I
real.
first
None
started
of us,
watching, I was like, is
yeah.
that Matt Damon's brother or
No,
something?
but you got Tony V in there, who's been in all Ben Affleck's movies. He plays my attorney, who's just you hear it in the trailer, his thick accent. But
Hmm.
no, those were all those we shot it on location in Western Massachusetts. Those are all practical locations, no sound stages. So it's all very lived in. We actually shot at a real paper mill. So you get that feel, a very lived in
Hmm.
feel that feels like why I reference the Deer Hunter is not just subject matter, just tonally, you're picking up in a, 10 years after my character's last deployment. And, that smokestack for the paper mill that's being closed is the last beacon of hope in this small town. And it was really important to show that.
And it's beautifully shot, folks. Sometimes you go to these movies and you're like, it's kind of, they don't have real stars, or, the acting isn't very good. And the movie it's beautiful. And the acting is amazing. It's throughout the movie, I was like, oh, I may not know that person's name. I'm not a huge movie person, but I recognize them. And I'm like, oh, yeah, oh, okay. And so you see him as a character as well, obviously, but you're like, hey, this is not a ensemble budget movie. This is like real actors on real scenes and real places, and it's beautifully shot. It's a visually appealing movie. I love the story. It resonates. I see a lot of my friends in a lot of the different actions that were going on. That the armful of pills that they've been prescribed, the violence, sometimes acting out. Um, I see that among friends and people I've served with. Just some people are doing a whole lot better than others. And I really appreciated the fact that it wasn't someone who just got home last week and is now acting out, because that isn't as
Mhm.
realistic as you might think. It's usually 5 or 10 years later. It's been a slow downhill. Things have been problematic. I got a job. I lost the job. Things have not been turning out the way that they had hoped. And, that hope is dying. And that's
Yeah.
actually something we talk about, and you talk about in the movie, finding your purpose and finding your tribe. How did those things get in this movie?
Well, yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it. And like Tara, you can weigh in on this because I remember when I was talking to you and doing that research in those early years, I didn't see broken people. I saw fragments, right? None of the characters feel sorry for themselves, and that was really important, right? Because there is resilience there, right? First of all, it takes courage to put the uniform on, right? And that's what I saw. And so what a commonality when I would travel across the country was I saw, especially with the younger generation of veteran, of in trying to find their tribe. I spent a lot of time with Vietnam veterans. Obviously, I did honor flight for years, and I was just very blessed with that. But there, a lot of them, could congregate at an American Legion or a VFW, and the younger generation seemed to kind of stray away from that. So you
Hmm.
would have a lot of isolation where maybe your only connective tissue is a Facebook group or something, but not actually missing that brotherhood or that sisterhood that you were so used to. And that's a huge part of your identity, especially in the military service. But that's why I felt it really key that the older generation that Vondi Curtis Hall portrays as a Vietnam veteran was identifying that, where he says, I've seen that look before. I bet you're
Hmm.
wondering, where's my tribe? I'm not talking about friendship. I'm talking about brotherhood. So Tara, like, I'd love to hear that from your standpoint as like a doctor, because that was really key to the depiction in the film.
I have to be honest, as a psychotherapist, I am horrified to admit this, but when I started at the VA about 20 years ago, I was younger. I didn't believe in groups. I was like, I don't like running groups. I don't like groups, group therapy. If I was going to be in therapy, I don't, holy mother of goodness. This is what time and experience teaches you outside of education, because single-handedly Stephen, in the writing, captured the beauty that happens and the growth that occurs within a group. Now, is it for everyone? No, but I have to be honest, when we're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, and in this case, post-traumatic growth, which is finding that purpose in the pain, figuring out, okay, I've been through this. what am I going to do to have this not break me, to find new meaning, new strength? While this pain has changed me in the process, what can I do to reframe that change, to own it and figure out how do I take this and give back and help others going through it? Hands down, group therapy and that thinking, the different treatments that are available, finding purpose in your pain is something that these men and women were able to do because of the group therapy that occurred, that then launched them into individual work and their own resiliency. That's what was captured with this film on some level.
And Tyler, just to add to that, I do think it was also important to show that, not every veteran has experienced combat. Not every veteran has been deployed. So the human element of the story and the trauma is not just solely based on a military operation, which is very kind of par for the course in a lot of these films. It's much deeper than that. It goes into childhood, and I think for us, it was important to show that it is okay to not be okay, but also that you don't have to do it alone, right? It's a messy journey, and it's just like, are you willing to commit to it for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones? And that was really important to get across, that, is, without spoiler alert, like towards the end of the film, that you understand that the journey has just begun. Like the hard work is ahead, but it's a noble and a worthy journey.
As I was watching the movie, and my wife and I talked through it, and we were watching, and she asked me a really good question, and I said, we talked a little bit about it. Is not everybody that goes to combat has PTSD, and some of the people that were in the deepest amount of it, no problems at all, and other people you would think, oh, they're in the rear, they're in a safe area, are having significant problems. And I said, hey, it's each person is different, but also the amount that you can influence what's happening to you is, I think, probably one of the biggest triggers. If you're an infantryman, you can go out and fight and do something. If you're a laundry and bath specialist and you're getting mortared every day, I watched a camp get hit with rockets every single day. They were about 10 clicks north of us, and they didn't have anything except sandbags. It was a logistics space, and they were getting hit every day. And, I could just imagine that these logisticians, people that move, beans, bullets, and ammo and fuel and everything else, are just getting hit. And there isn't a whole lot they can do about it. Meanwhile, if something else happens against people that are more at the tip of the spear, they can go do something about it. And so we're talking about, like, why is it that some people have more issues than others? And sometimes it's just the ability to react to it as opposed to it happening to you.
Mm.
And I think the film captures that pretty well about, hey, it really just depends on the person, and if there's no weakness involved. It's literally, there's so many characteristics and features of what's going on that you can't say, oh, well, they definitely have PTSD, because X. Well, that's not true. But at the same time, oh, well, they're a laundry specialist, they're a lawyer, they're a whatever. They couldn't possibly. But the reality is, even the chemical corps were out there sweeping for bombs, and you think that they would be the furthest away from doing any sort of direct combat stuff. But they're out there, well, we didn't need check for chemicals, so they're out, a whole brigade of them. And so there's been a whole sea change in how we approach PTSD, but also how we approach the moral injuries and other things that are so prevalent that are touched on in this movie.
Here's the thing I'd like to bring up real quick, though, is I frequently find, it doesn't even matter the branch, whether you're active duty, National Guard, a reservist, is that when someone says I was just insert an MOS, I was just this, my question is, were you allowed to wear a baseball hat while you were doing that? Because if you had a helmet on, by the very nature that you have safety protections on, it says safety is an issue. And if
Yeah.
safety is going to be an issue, then it doesn't matter how much training you received, what your childhood was. It's almost like when trauma occurs, here's what the difference is when somebody develops PTSD versus those who don't. If I take a box of Legos and I dump them all out, metaphorically speaking, what it comes down to is If you're the person who doesn't develop PTSD after going that experience, on some level, whether it was your training within the military, something about your childhood, it does what it is you were given the visual. Here is the box that goes with the Legos. So you put that together a little bit faster than
Mm-hmm.
the individuals who didn't. So the guardsman or woman, excuse me, but who gets assigned to be tasked with this, they might not develop it, even though they didn't have the same training as the unit they were attached to. But if on their onboarding and integration and assimilation into that unit, they are given enough to have that visual to deal with that mess of a Lego box. That's what it comes down to, is on some level, what is that connection, that lack of isolation, and the resiliency that plays into it?
So let me ask you this, Steve. What was the biggest surprise or most shocking, I guess, thing that you learned as you were doing this research into all these veterans? You're talking to a lot of people, you're looking at and hearing these stories, and it doesn't fit neatly necessarily into the general population's view of what things actually are. What was probably the most surprising?
So I lost some people along the way,
Hmm.
right? And it was very, very difficult because I was never equipped for that. And people that I've been the last phone call where I've been successful. So I stopped shutting my phone off at night. I stopped doing that because I was afraid if I missed a call. I think the thing that was most shocking to me is, and isn't this just life, is that the people that I needed to worry about were the people that were smiling through the pain.
Hmm.
The people that I didn't need to worry as much about were the people that were probably broadcasting it on social platforms or something, right? It's just a different kind of way of how you handle. And I think that that was kind of a bit of a shock to me, and I don't know why. I had nothing to compare it to, you know. I think the other thing too is, and I don't want to make Tara worry as a therapist because we're going to get through this. Um, I didn't realize that other people's lived nightmares would become my own. So in those early days, like when I first got back from that first road trip, I was starting to see in graphic detail in my nightmares hand-to-hand combat, and that's very rare, by the way, and we all know that. Um, but just all of those aspects, all the stories that had been shared with me in intimacy had become, I had slowly taken that on and I wasn't aware of it. And I didn't have somebody in my life at the time. A lot of my research, I'd get back to my laptop, I'd do an acting role, I'd be back in my trailer, did it, you know, and I didn't have somebody in my life at the time. I hadn't met my wife yet. And to be equipped to go, hey, you know, going into a restaurant and you're not willing to have your back to the door, looking at everybody's hands and bags and things, like you have this, you know, you're hypersensitive and hypervigilant. And I think that once I got to a place, I remember waking up one morning because I had been self-medicating, and and I woke up one morning going, "This is nuts. This didn't actually happen to me."
Hmm.
And I was like, "How did I get here?" You know? And I think that it's kind of like, as they say, it's like getting, you get really close to the work, you become the work. And I think that what really helped my sort of therapy, and I'm not putting it off, by the way, Tara, so that's why I don't want you to worry, because there will come a day. I'm just not ready just yet. But my therapy became the community that trusted me. So I could
Hmm.
reach out to a Gold Star mother and have a chat, and then I would sleep better at night. I
Hmm.
could reach out to any of my veteran brothers and sisters that had I spent time with and reach out to them, and there was that support. And isn't that the way? I find that most veterans tell me that the support they get is within their own community because there isn't that bridge um, to the civilian world, and that's an honor for me as a civilian to have that. But I think that was probably sort of, if you would say, the most shocking, but something that I just wasn't prepared for because you know you're a frontiersman, right? You're this is new ground, you know, and I wasn't prepared for that. And you're learning on the, you're building the plane as you're in the air,
Hmm.
you know?
So one of the scenes that I thought was fantastic that was included was the EMDR, which is a therapy technique. Maybe Tara can tell us about it, but my wife was watching and she wasn't familiar with it. And I've had every type of PTSD or other mental health treatment that is being researched on this show. We've had people talking on it. We're talking everything from ketamine to Indian wigwams to you name it. It's if it's out there and it shows promise, we're going to let people know about it. But this one has been shown to work. The VA uses it. A lot of therapists use it for dealing with trauma, but it looks funky as heck if you look
Yeah.
at it from an external point of view. Tara, can you shed some light on that
I can.
with the
So
lights, I
it
guess?
right, yeah, right. And again, when this is still it's a practice that's still developing. It is structured. It's an evidence-based approach, but essentially when we go through a trauma, the way we form stuck points. Stuck points might be thoughts that you have about the way you interact and perceive the world. And so what the eye movement desensitization does is it takes these memories through repeated review and processing and really beats a dead horse, for lack of a better term, going through what the sights are, the sounds, the emotions, all of the connections. And you speak about it. There's different modalities, but typically you speak about it presently, you go through the stuck material, and it essentially goes through engaging both sides of the brain. So when we do the side to side eye movements or the tapping or auditory tones, it depends on how you were trained, but you would do this and incorporate those techniques while recalling the specific distressing portions of the memory. What this does is just as if I hate to bring it back to drugs or alcohol, but if anybody listening had a moment where they were inebriated and they did something really embarrassing, and the next day they're embarrassed, they're horrified, they can't even think about it, but you ask them about it a month later, well, they've beaten themselves up and on some level kind of informally might have done a version of EMDR where they've kind of processed it through. Well, this takes that, puts it on steroids, and focused and surgically goes through and targets these memories. So that way it brings the emotions down, it habituates it. And through the bilateral stimulation, it essentially helps you to reprocess this event in a way that integrates it into your larger life story. So it's no longer an active hemorrhaging wound, it's something more of a scar tissue. The scar is there. You're going to always have it be there, but you've survived it. And it helps you replace that sense of danger, danger. The world is dangerous. I'm dangerous. You're dangerous. I'm still in danger too. I've made it through. I did the best I could, reframes, challenges, and kind of marries in a peaceful way your memories versus what you wished would have happened and some of the takeaways on how the story is that you're telling yourself about what you've survived.
Yeah,
That's
when I
about as
was watching
succinctly as I
and
could do
watching
it.
the LED lights and
Yes.
the actor portrayal of it, and I was like, oh, I know what that is. And my wife's like, is that a video game? Is that, I'm like,
Mm.
no, no, it's a real technique. It works. It's very, very helpful for a lot of people. And you explained it very well. It's a great technique, and you can do it a lot of times. And the touching and the tapping that the Graham's Steven's character does throughout the movie uh, is very common. And I thought it was really interesting that it was not only just sort of part of the movie, but it's portrayed prominently in several points. When your character was talking to the little girl and
Yeah.
she brought it up. And I was like, oh, that's an excellent point of, like, hey, it just calms me down, helps me think of, something else, especially when I'm stressed. And a lot of people do it and they do it naturally. They haven't even been taught. You have all these kind of ticks and
Mm.
mannerisms that people have taught, but these are very specific things. How did you know to put that in there, Stephen?
Okay. Well, EMDR was my time spent with Tara and the VA and so on. But with tapping, I was in a very traumatic event when I was bartending in college. I was a victim of an armed robbery. And without getting into those details, I was essentially forced into treatment because of just how traumatized I was, and I didn't realize I was. And I was in the middle of my university exams, and I was like pushing that away, and I just needed to focus on school, and um, and tapping was one of the I've ended up going to get care, and tapping was one of those forms of treatment that really worked for me. That essentially, when the thought or idea comes into your head of like, whether you're clapping, stomping your feet, or a touch point, and I portray it in the film as how, like, my character feels like it's ridiculous, which is what my reaction also was too, where I'm like, oh my God, you think, you got a loaded shotgun to your head? You think tapping on your, that's not gonna, I'm telling you, for anyone that's listening, everybody's different. Every treatment's different. It worked for me as one of the treatments. And I thought it was really important and very simple, especially because, as Virginia Madsen's character was trying to leave him with something as she's at work at the diner, something helpful and immediate that he can
Hmm.
do. And I thought that that seemed very befitting, and it was important to show. And I'd also like, we can, talk about the film does, there's different treatments that we show in it. And obviously, as a movie, we're not an industrial film where we're gonna, go through every single different treatment and so on. But, for folks listening, I've had friends, veterans, especially combat veterans, that have been able to transition off. And I'm not a doctor, and I'm not giving it an endorsement before I say this, but have been able to transition off certain pharmaceuticals with medical marijuana, and have felt that that's very helpful for them. Everybody's different. Again, not being a doctor, I have a friend that is a veteran who's dealt with a lot of family tragedy, and he's been doing ketamine treatments.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, at a
And we have a
clinic.
show about that. If you guys are interested, you can just
Okay.
go watch it.
That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of really great information and great studies on it, Tara. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too, because for him, I can't share what he shared with me other than its efficacy, and he swears by it. It's very surreal. I kind of compare it to things that have been shared with me about friends that have done like ayahuasca and almost in South America, but this is more clinical. And but
Hmm.
he has just said that his fear, when we talk about danger, his anxiety, a lot of these things have been attenuated based on this treatment that he's been doing. And I find that really interesting, that that's available and can be available potentially to folks. But Tara, what's been your experience in some of your patients?
So I have to be honest, ketamine was again one of those things because, hold on, I was born in the 70s, just say no to drugs, right? So
Right.
anything that is not like big pharma for the early part of my career was kind of taboo. Once again, hello, flip the script. Ketamine, especially in my experience growing up, if you will, within the VA, and the research that they've been doing over the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years. I can't get into the nuts and bolts of ketamine, the drug, but I can tell you that it is such a powerful antidepressant. And what makes it unique is the way it works is different than Zoloft or Prozac. This is something that often within hours, instead of weeks, it is immediately targeting the brain. And when you have an infusion or the
Mm.
nasal, and you're doing this in conjunction, please note I'm recommending within my scope that you would do this medication and therapy hand in hand. Specifically, if you're using this with post-traumatic stress disorder, the way in which this medication works is it is targeting the brain's stress response symptoms. And when you are overactivated, the way you might be suffering from PTSD, regions like the amygdala, which processes fear, this typically stays on high alert. It is constantly going, looking for danger, picking arguments. There is an edge to your personality that you might not be able to shake, and this impacts rational thinking, emotional
Hmm.
regulation. These things go offline. This particular medication, again, in tandem with therapy, chef's kiss. I have yet to run into somebody who has participated in this treatment and has not had a positive experience. Am I saying that you're walking away 100%? Perfect? No, but you know what? I will take a 85% reduction in symptoms. That is some of this. The only other time I've seen some of those statistics is specifically with prolonged exposure
Yeah.
therapy. And
Mm.
that's about it. That's a solid 12-week course as opposed to some of the shorter term, yet lasting power that we see within ketamine care.
One of the most interesting things in, I was a special agent. I have investigated people for crimes, and I have a lot of cop friends. And over the last
Oh,
10 years or so, there's been such a radical shift of both marijuana, but other treatments for specific things that would have been unheard of. I have friends that were senior police officers that have now retired, and over the past they were the biggest dare proponents, like say no to drugs, anything's horrible, marijuana is bad. I've never done drugs. I work in a job where you can't do any of these things, but they have shifted 180 degrees, and not only they recognize, hey, maybe this works for 50% of the people. That's probably better than 50% of the pharmaceuticals. Like a out of the park medication works for about 50% of the people somewhat. And if you go look at the numbers and statistics of all that is amazing. I don't want to get too far off track because I do want to talk a little bit more about the movie, but also about Team House Studios and the number of people that are gold stars or veterans that were
Hmm.
involved in the movie. I didn't realize that at first. And then I was doing some research and I saw that. What is Team House Studios? And tell us about how you incorporated some of these folks in the movie.
Sure. So I formed this production company about 5 years ago with the mission to employ and train veterans in front and behind the camera. It's a very collaborative spirit. We've had, when we shot our first film, it was just a small sort of proof of concept film. Veterans would report back to me that, like, hey, I haven't felt like sort of this brotherhood, like quite like this since my
Hmm.
service. Or, if you're staying all at an Airbnb and you're part of the crew, you get that camaraderie after you wrap, and then you have these lifelong friendships. And I was like, wow, if we can create that and we can make something special together that we're all really proud of, hey, that's a really wonderful thing. So on Sheepdog, we were able to and honored to hire 17 military veterans and 5 Gold Star family members. And I always say this when people ask, but it truly is an honor, but our production benefits so greatly from it because veterans like to stay busy, right? I'm
Hmm.
painting with a broad brush, but they don't complain about carrying sandbags at 5 in the morning on a film set. And there's this collaborative spirit where everybody's counting on each other, and I really like that. And it's just if there's anything that I do in my life, this will be the most outside of being a father to my son, this will be the most important thing. And so, I'm looking for other avenues, and there's other projects that we're looking at and so on. And, obviously if Sheepdog is able to find the audience that we hope it does, that will open other doors and we can create more jobs. But it's a look, when you're filming on an afternoon and you have 5 Gold Star family members, you're in the presence of greatness, and it's very humbling and it's very special. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Finding that purpose and finding that tribe sounds like it's a
Yeah.
perfect match. Making a film and also having the same people involved in making the film. With that kind of work, when you're deployed or in the military in general, everybody sort of, even if they're in a different service, you'll see it at the VA. People that are, 90-year-old World War II veteran or Vietnam or Korea or something, and somebody who just did a 4-year tour of service, and they'll start chatting, and there's that
Yeah.
camaraderie. And I'm
Yes.
sure that happened on the film sets
Oh,
as well.
yes. Yeah, it's great. And then you witness it. Like there's a scene in the movie where Vondi, Curtis Hall, is sitting with a group of veterans, and I just rolled the camera on them and just let them sort of just chat and whatever. And it's so like Vondi laughs. That's all genuine. None of that's performed. And it's just like, yeah, the camaraderie. And then at lunchtime, and it's great. And I hope to expand the program on future projects. That would be just so great because the experience has been wonderful. And I from what I've heard back from the folks that we've been able to hire and train, it's been great for them too. And so yeah, it's just an honor.
So how would somebody, if they're interested, want to get in touch with Team House Studios and perhaps be involved in the next adventure?
Sure. So on our website at sheepdogthemovie.com, you can sign up for updates, and that's kind of our portal. We also have teamhousestudios.com. You can reach out to us there. Um, Again, I'd like to dedicate 2026 to putting funding together to be able to expand, not just funding for an actual project, but funding to support that training. Um, and so that's my hope. But you can reach out on either one of those. We're also on social media on all the platforms, whether it's Team House Studios or Sheepdog the movie. But yeah, we're hoping for we're hoping for growth in 2026.
Well, I'm hopeful that it is as successful as it can possibly be. I really enjoyed the movie. I was able to have a sneak peek, and so I was really excited to watch it. It was sort of had to get it on my computer. I couldn't get it up on the TV, with all the things to make sure that, it doesn't leak and all those things.
Yeah,
I had it all up right here, and we watched it, and I love the movie. Now, I know a lot of people will love to go watch the movie as well. How do you go see the movie? When is it
sure.
coming out? Where can they find it?
Sure. So the Sheepdog will be in selected theaters in December, and then it'll be nationwide in January. We're also partnering. We're announcing this in a few weeks with VetTix and First Tix. It's their first film partnership, which we're very lucky and honored to have. And if you're a veteran or a first responder, you will be able to go to sign up at if you're not already a VetTix or First Tix member to sign up, and we will have a program to ensure that you can see Sheepdog with donated tickets from VetTix. And again, that announcement will go out in the next couple of weeks. But yes, nationwide in January. It is definitely, as we've seen on the film festival circuit, a very communal experience to see it in theaters. The sound design, is it brings you into this world. You bring your family, bring your friends, experience it with a group, and then share your experience with us on social media. We're very responsive, we're very connected, and we're all in this together. So
I love the movie. I thought it displayed exactly what so many people are going through. There were a few scenes that were just small little features, little details that I thought, well, oh yeah, that rings true. And so a lot of times you see those details and you pass right by them, but like, the armload of prescription pills or the humor that is used amongst veterans
yeah,
amongst
yeah.
themselves, that rang so true. And there are a couple scenes that were, uh, difficult to process. I don't want to give away the store, but
Mm-hmm.
where they're dealing with loss. There was a number of funerals throughout the show, and I was like, oh, this is like maybe they should have mentioned some funerals throughout the movie, because there was quite a few. But it really reflects on the challenges that people are going through and how they deal with loss. And I could probably write a whole essay on the layering and the foreshadowing and the all the other things that are inherent in any book or film that are of
Mm-hmm.
such good quality. I know I've asked you a lot of things about the movie. I'm sure there's some things that I should have asked but haven't. What should I have asked you about but we haven't gotten to yet?
Sure. I think, Tara, I'll go and then, weigh in on this. But look, I wanted to make something that was honest and authentic and to depict people that have climbed the mountain and touched the fire. And what is it like on the other side of that coming down that mountain? Um, we didn't hold any punches. We held the mirror up and told the truth as we had experienced it firsthand. Uh, Sheepdog is, as I said, it's not a post-traumatic stress movie. It's a post-traumatic growth movie. And my hope is that our audience walks away with a sense of hope, with a call to action, to be more involved in our communities. You don't have to do treatment alone. You don't have to, your challenges that you face, you don't have to face those alone. And I think that, if all the film does is create a conversation when, afterwards you go and see it in theaters and you want to go for a drink or a coffee and just chat, or your drive home with your loved one and it just sparks a conversation, that would be a wonderful thing. if we can save a single life with this film, I would say it would be the greatest Hollywood success story.
I was thinking as I was watching it, this movie is for veterans, but it's not really for veterans. I think the people that would get the most out of it are the people around veterans or
Hmm.
that know somebody that want to understand what veterans are going through in a very accurate depiction.
Yeah, let
The
me.
veterans already know it generally. I mean, it's great for veterans, but really the family members, the friends, the people that are interested in and around veterans and
Yeah,
that experience that they're going through, because it's pretty clearly depicted accurately.
well, I appreciate that because I want to share something really quickly. Like we did experience this on the festival circuit all across the country with family members that attended with veterans or worked in the mental health community. Um, but this one particular we were screening at the Twin Cities Film Festival in Minneapolis last year, and a veteran stood up, Marine Corps veteran, combat veteran, and he was in tears. And in front of a full house, he said, I wish I had this movie 10 years ago to show my family why I am the way I am, but why they are the way they are. I wish
Hmm.
I could, my ex-wife needs to see this movie. And he
Hmm.
just said, thank you, because the families are going to benefit from seeing this. And that, like, you couldn't ask for, a greater compliment or greater feedback from that. And I do agree with you. It is so important that the families see that because we do deal with, in the film, military spouses and when you were talking earlier about, a funeral scene in the movie, it was important to show, though, of the journey that I had to go there to honestly
Hmm.
depict what it is and not sugarcoat anything, but also give the audience, a sense of hope. Okay, well, in all your research, Stephen, what did you walk away with? Well, this is it, and I hope that it can impact the lives of folks the way we're seeing it, of all generations. And I've seen it from 20-year-old college students that are studying mental health right now to be where Tara is currently, to Vietnam veterans that have like wept in my arms and whispered in my ear, thank you for telling our story, to OIF and OAF vets that have stood up, in our Q&As and said, finally. And we take that with such humility, but with great responsibility. So that's truly my hope, Tyler.
No, that's very accurate. Tara?
How am I supposed to follow that? I will tell you
Oh.
right now that single-handedly with this movie, this has been a pleasure to just be a part of this team. The reason I bring this up is when you do what I do, what so many people do to give back, connection is key. When you are a military member, a family member, there is so much that goes into the bureaucracy, the politics, the trauma, just, and this begins with boot camp. So when I came up with a tagline for my private practice, it's sometimes it's not about running towards a light, but embracing the dark to become your own light. What is the point of that? Sometimes we have to turn towards what hurts to be able to understand it. And so when we're talking about trauma, when we're talking about suicide prevention, here's the deal. At the end of the day, the takeaway I would like for people to have is treatment works. Life is not over just because you have a diagnosis. You've
Hmm.
got to connect, and you don't have to have the right words. You simply need to show up. That's all you need to do is make the phone call, whether you're the person in need or if you're their support person, they're their backup dancer. Sometimes all you have to do is simply show up. Make sure you're texting your people, you're calling your people, and that you're checking in. Just be direct, but be there.
Stephen, as I was watching the movie, I had that tightness in my chest going, oh, I recognize this. It wasn't like fear, it wasn't concern, but it was like, oh yeah, it's the next generation of war after we've been at war for 20 years and people go home and deal with their own challenges. And that's often forgotten because it's not a consolidated group. It's millions of people have deployed now. And we've been fighting this war on terror since 2001, really. And so we're at like 24 years of constant deployments. We have people in like 168 countries right now. That's an amazing thing for one country to have people in. Some are in active combat and some are in, places where it's not, but they're still deployed. They're still away from their families, and they're going to continue to have some of these challenges, more or less. And it's such a great depiction of the reality of so many. Obviously, it's consolidated, but yes, it's a great storyline, and I really appreciated watching it. And it was, that tightness in my chest. I said, "Oh, this is a good movie," because there very rarely do I get that kind of a emotion, feeling that endorphins or whatever it is that's flooding through, going, "Oh, I hope something bad doesn't happen," or this, that, and it's very real, and I really appreciated that. Thank you so much for coming on Coming Home Well and getting a sneak peek at it. Folks, the movie website is Sheepdog the Movie. You'll be able to see it in theaters, some selected theaters in December, nationwide in January. Go check your local listings. Go check out VetTix. They are awesome. I've gone to a few events with them. They always have some great things going. Your local folks might as well. Go check it out. And bring a few friends. Go talk to the folks at the VFW or American Legion. I'm sure that they're going to have folks getting together to go watch it. Hopefully this thing sells out and you guys are able to do the next project even bigger and better. But this one's pretty amazing. And thank you so much for coming on Coming Home Well.
Thank you so much for having us, Tyler. We really appreciate it. Tara, you mean the world to me, and I'm so grateful for you trusting me. And I'm excited to share this film with the country, with the world, in January.
Thank you again for coming on Coming Home Well, and so appreciate everything you're doing by making this movie for veterans, about veterans, but also with veterans and Gold Star families. Quite an amazing achievement. Thank you again.
Thanks for joining us this week on Coming Home Well with Dr. Tyler Pieron. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and a review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well, this is Coming Home Well.